Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2025 Valero Texas Open DFS Tactics show. We have a lot to cover this evening. I don't want to waste any time. Let's get right into it. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from FantasyNational.com. It is the best golf analytic tool out there for your money. Go check out FantasyNational.com. You will not regret it. In the description of the video, there are links to all of the social media. First off, my X and Instagram, where normally I post research regarding the tournament of the week, some course information, patterns of previous winners. If you want to see the weekly research that I do on the PGA Tour, give me a follow at your preferred social media site. X is also where I place my weekly betting cards and top player usage in the DFS contest I play that comes out every Wednesday after the DFS Tactics show, so that'll be out later this evening. If you want to see the players that I'm wagering, the players that I'm using most often in my DFS lineups, go give me a follow over at X. And then lastly, for social media, Gabe's handle's in the description. He writes a great article called The Fringe. Really can't recommend it enough. It is a free article to subscribe to, and you need to follow him. That way you can check out our detailed write-ups for our picks week in and week out. We started that this year, have continued to go on. I do hold a 1-point lead after a pretty successful week last week, and Gabe has been... he's had some struggles, to be fair, the past couple of weeks. So I do hold a 1-point lead. If you want to see our detailed write-ups, the only way you're going to be able to see that is if you follow him over on social media. Make sure you're doing that. Show him some support. And then lastly, for this intro, we're live. Chat's open. Want to hear from you all. Who's your winner? Who are you targeting the most? I do have an interesting poll question for the viewers this evening, so I would appreciate your input on that. Make sure you put your vote in if you're able to catch the show live. And as always, if you're not able to catch the show live, drop your opinions and thoughts into the comments. I'll always get to those as well. So let's get into it. Let's figure out our strategies and our tactics for the 2025 Valero Texas Open. And we're going to start, as we always do, on a Wednesday evening over at the Super Forecast for Wind Finder. I am not going to deal with the camera this evening. Just gonna have it shut off, and you'll just have some sound, and you don't have to look at my ugly mug. Good evening, Rose. Thanks for jumping in chat. Very much appreciated. Good to see you this evening. I do have to give you a little bit of grief. Minwoo cooked for me, and I mentioned last week how I was all in on Minwoo. Had the outright. So. However, it wasn't without some stress, considering he hit one about a bajillion miles offline into the water on, 15 or 16? So that certainly added more stress than what needed to. But I was pretty happy with my performance last week. Hopefully you had a very good Houston Open. You are ready for the Valero Texas Open as we prep for the Masters next week. But again, good to see you this evening. He cooked for the whole family. He was, again, having that outright certainly helped. It made it a really, really, really good week. Before I forget, let me post the poll question for the evening. Which of these big name, out of form players most intrigue you this week? And again, it's a subjective definition for intrigue. You know, whether you're wanting to see if they find some form for the Masters, whether you're using them this week, I'll leave it a loose definition. But which of these big name, out of form players most intrigue you this week? Is it Tony Finau? Is it Sam Burns? Is it Matt Fitzpatrick? Or is it Max Homa? So again, if you're watching the show live, I ask that you contribute. Take some time, give it a thought, and fill out that poll question. The forecast for the San Antonio area for the Valero Texas Open. We've got some rain in the forecast. Looks like it's going to start with a little bit tomorrow morning. Not too much, but it does look like we're getting quite a bit of rain on Friday. And like we've talked about for a couple of weeks, even if there were a wave advantage to develop, which I don't see one, I don't know how much I would pay attention to it because there was a supposed humongous wave advantage at the Valspar a couple of weeks ago, and it didn't materialize. Everybody all week talked about how the Thursday AM, Friday PM wave was just heads and tails had the better draw, and then the cut is made, and 39 players from the morning and Thursday morning and 39 players from the Thursday afternoon groups made it through. So the wave advantage never materialized, and I just don't see one this week either, based on what we're looking at here. Not to mention that with this rain in the forecast, and they had some rain earlier in the week as well, we could be looking at some delays. It's not a guarantee, but that's a possibility, and then that throws any kind of wave advantage out the door anyway. So for what I see, I'm just playing the guys that I think is going to play TBC San Antonio the best. I think if delays do get involved, I would think that the Thursday PM would probably have the better part of that draw, just because they're supposedly going to have some calm winds tomorrow, and then with delays allows this to get pushed out. That would be my guess. Again, I'm not banking on it. I'm not going to factor that in. But if you wanted to play an angle, if you wanted to play a narrative, I would probably lean Thursday PM, Friday AM, anticipating or hoping, I guess, for some delays. Otherwise, the weekend looks chaotic. A little bit more rain in the forecast for Saturday morning, but you see these wind gusts. Winds, consistently into the mid-teens, gusts into the 20s, and then Sunday, much the same. I wouldn't be worried too much about this. You notice 4 a.m., 7 a.m. players aren't playing at that time, but when they are playing, sustained winds near 20, gusts into the 20s. It's going to be a very, very windy Valero Texas Open, particularly on the weekend. So with that, we'll move to Fantasy National, and we'll cover the players that have been the best in moderate and windy conditions for the past couple years. Your top performers in moderate and windy conditions: Patrick Cantlay, Denny McCarthy, Jordan Spieth, Sam Burns, Ricky Fowler, Matt Fitzpatrick, Corey Connors, Harry Hall, Andrew Novak, and Justin Rose are your top 10 in terms of performance in the wind. So definitely give these players an added boost in your considerations, in your lineups. As you finalize them this evening, they have played well in the wind. Other players that have not played well in the wind: Max McGreevy, Eric Van Rooyen, Snedeker, Tom Kim. We've done a lot on him, how he's really good in the windiest of windy conditions. It's actually the moderate that is knocking him down. Matty Schmid, Trey Mullinax, Seamus Power, Alonto Griffin, Harry Higgs. Those are some of the players that haven't played well in the wind. Hey, good evening, Derek. Thanks for jumping in chat. Very much appreciated. Good to see you this evening. Not even going to mess with the camera, so you get the sound without having to look at the ugly mug. But good to see you. Hopefully you're ready for the Valero Texas Open. And we're going to try and build on the momentum, or at least I'm going to try and build on my momentum from last week. Get you some momentum, considering you mentioned how you didn't have the strongest of weeks last week in preparation for the Masters. Good evening, Phil. Thanks for jumping in chat. Very much appreciated. We're starting to get some viewers flowing in here. Again, very much appreciative. I'm thankful that you all take the time to watch and to listen. Hopefully you're ready for the Valero Texas Open, Phil. Have everything situated, and if not, that's what we're here for. So any last questions that you have, feel free to put it into the chat. Locked and loaded. You do stocks at all? Stock market crashing right now? I don't mess with stocks. People have mentioned how they think that being a statistician and a data analyst, it might be up my alley, if you will, but just doesn't interest me all that much. All right, we took a look at the wind, and that's really the only review, if you will, that I kind of want to look at. So let's just jump into the mixed condition model that I've made for TPC San Antonio this week. It is not as a big of a model, I guess is the best way to put it. I only have 12 metrics in this one as opposed to the 14 that I had, for the players and for Houston last week and all that. I'm just not sold that it's going to be as difficult as TPC San Antonio generally plays. Because of all that rain, they might have a little bit of ball in hand, or they might even have some delays. Thursday and Friday, I think, are going to be pretty easy. Now, Saturday and Sunday look very, very, very difficult based on all that wind. So I wasn't terribly confident in building a humongous model because I'm not sure how difficult it's going to play, or more specifically, I think we're going to have two distinct tournaments in terms of difficulty. I think Thursday and Friday are going to be, average, might even sneak around of easy in there, and then I think Saturday and Sunday are going to be extremely difficult. We'll start the mixed condition model with 5% off the tee. I'm not sold on this. I'm more concerned with the accuracy or the precision, as you can see down here with good drives. But distance can help you here. It's not mandatory. I mean, look at the two playoff guys last year. Batia, more known for being a longer hitter. Denny McCarthy is not long at all. So, a lot of different ways to get around TPC San Antonio. So 5% off the tee. I did use the filtered long courses in case we get some delays and we get that rain that is in the forecast. This could, add some yardage. The ball might not roll out as much, etc. So 5% off the tee, 15% on approach. Again, just one of the main statistical categories that I look at week in and week out. TPC San Antonio rewards good iron play. You have to be pretty sharp with your irons, considering these greens aren't easy to hit. So 15% approach, 5% around the green. And you might wonder why this is so small or short. It's because I put most of the around the green play in sand saves. So 10% in sand saves, 5% in general around the green. So really, if you want to think about it, we kind of have a hidden 15% in sand saves. Sand play and bunker play is just extremely important around Valero. These bunkers are cavernous. Players complain about them a lot. So you're going to have to be pretty tidy in the bunker to contend this week. 5% on Poa Trivialis putting, like we've done for the past month. We're back on Poa Trivialis, or we're on Poa Trivialis still, I should say. I didn't want to overweight this, especially because putting's not a huge deal here. Look at these past winners. Corey Connors twice. Akshay Bhatia, not a great putter. Corey Connors is not a great putter. But you don't have to have success here, or you don't have to be known as a good putter to have success here. So I didn't want to overrate it, but I did want to factor in players that perhaps are putting well on Poa Trivialis at the moment, or have traditionally done so. Talked a little bit about it, but 15% good drives. I'm mostly focused on the precision this week. Guys finding fairways, or more importantly, finding greens if they do miss the fairways. I've seen it around social media quite a bit, so hopefully you have too, but if you haven't, there's actually a higher birdie rate from the rough at TPC San Antonio than there is from the fairway. It's just one of the oddities about this course. Fairways are pretty difficult to hit, or players aren't necessarily worried about being in the rough because it's not very long, much like Houston last week. So it's more so wanting to find the players who are hitting greens, but there is a little bit of aspect of fairway finding, because if you're completely offline, you will get into a lot of trouble here. But you can be, slightly offline, I suppose. 10% sand saves, talked about that a little bit, and how bunker play is extremely important around TPC San Antonio. 5% opportunities when scoring is difficult. The past couple of weeks, I've been splitting out the bogey avoidance and the birdies gained. There are not a lot of eagles around TPC San Antonio, so I didn't want to look at birdies are better. You could argue to look at birdies gained. Probably wouldn't argue with you, but I kind of wanted to look at opportunities. Guys that are just going to give themselves several looks to make putts, and then it all depends on if the putter cooperates. But these greens are pretty big, but they're not easy to hit. So, and the way that they're shaped, with some false fronts and some runoffs, if the player does hit the green, that's probably an opportunity in of itself. They're kind of dome shaped, if you will. So again, this is kind of a little bit of a tangent or my angle. Didn't want to overrate it or overweight it. So it's only 5%, but 5% opportunities when scoring is difficult. 10% bogey avoidance when rounds are difficult. This might not be as big of a factor as I've got it weighted, considering Thursday and Friday do look somewhat easier. I do think this is going to be a big factor over the weekend with that forecast. So 10% bogey avoidance, 10% in total procs. I spent some time Monday night talking about how I wasn't sure which proximity range I wanted to look at. And as I got into it, the less confident I became. So I just look at total procs. Players are going to be hitting all sorts of different irons into these greens. You're going to have some wedges, thanks to some short par fours. You're going to have some long irons, thanks to some longer par threes. Some of the two of the par fives are gettable in two. Two of them really aren't. So there's just a whole mix of different lengths of irons that players will use to get into these greens. I wasn't terribly confident in a particular range, so 10% total procs. That might be one of the bigger weaknesses of the mixed condition model. Is if someone is very confident that, say 100 to 125 or 200 plus, if those become drastically more important this week, I will certainly be softer, or I'll be less on that, considering I wasn't confident in it. 10% in total par fours. The only thing that concerns me about this is it is looking at par fours that are 500 plus, but there aren't any of those around TPC San Antonio. So for some players that played the Farmers, that played the Century, that have some 500 plus par fours, like Houston last week, those are getting factored in a little bit with this because I'm not filtering out any particular range. But every other length here, 0 to 450, or actually 0 to 500, there's just nothing over 500. 0 to 500 is used here at TPC San Antonio. So 10% in total par fours, and then 5% on the two specific lengths of par fives. That's a look at the mixed condition model for the week. Hopefully I've explained some areas where I might be weak, or maybe have some or too much percentage. Maybe I've neglected something. But overall, I feel pretty good with this, with the exception of the couple of things that I mentioned I was a little less confident in. I definitely didn't want to overweight putting. I wanted to factor in a lot of sand saves, and I'm more focused on the precision this week against anything else. Hence the 15% good drives, 5% opportunities, 15% approach. There's a look at the mixed condition model. We'll move to Microsoft Excel and the reveal of my rankings for the week. As a reminder for returning viewers, for your information, if you're a new viewer, my rankings are based on 3 criteria. The FNGC rank, Fantasy National, will spit out a numerical ranking based on the mixed condition model we just went over, the metrics and percentages that we just covered. Course value is an attempt at giving a player a numerical value based on how well they have played that course. Normally, the past 5 years, the Valero Texas Open was canceled in 2020, so in this case, it's only the past 4 years. Hey, good evening, Joey. Thanks for jumping in chat. Very much appreciated. Hopefully, you've been well and have done well lately, ready for the Valero Texas Open. And coming back to my rankings, the third and final piece of my rankings, projected ownership, and these ownerships are from Gabe. And if you are a subscriber to his article, you'll be able to get these ownerships earlier than just this evening. He sends these out earlier on Wednesdays. But projected ownership, we're playing DFS. We're trying to find unique options compared to our fellow contestants. They are a factor into my rankings as well. Surprised to see Gary Woodland not rated well when he finished second last week and has great course history. Well, that's a very good segue. We'll talk about it here in a moment. Let me get through this top 10, Derek, and then I'll explain why I'm not very high on him. My top 10 for the Valero Texas Open. Number 1 is Hideki, and I'm not terribly excited about that. He's getting helped because he is quite a bit more unique than the others around his price, particularly Connors. You see Connors is at 31%. Hideki is half of that. That's why Hideki is really catapulting. Granted, he's still rated 4th by the numbers, but he's really rising because of the uniqueness compared to others. Hideki, number 1. Tommy Fleetwood, 2nd. Denny McCarthy, Corey Connors, and Keegan Bradley round out my top 5. Siwoo Kim, Tom Hoagie, Akshay Bhatia, Ludwig Aubert, and 7,200 Andrew Putnam round out my top 10. All right, before we get too much into it, just because you mentioned it, Derek, I'll bring us back to Fantasy National really quick. And if you are if you follow Gabe over on social media, you'll see my detailed write-up on Gary Woodland as I talk about him in that lengthy write-up. But he finished second last week, Derek, and I think it's smoke and mirrors. He gained 9, basically, on the greens last week. And you see Gary Woodland is traditionally not a great putter. He's not horrendous. He's not Luke List. But this is an aberration for anybody. Even if this was Denny McCarthy, this is an aberration. No one can sustain gaining 9 on the greens. Now, yes, his irons were pretty good. Very good, to be fair to him. And he's known as a ball striker. I am concerned with this, and the around the green play has not been very good in 2025. And you have to have some around the green here. Gary Woodland made up for his lack of around the green last week because he seemingly made everything. So that is why I'm not very high on Woodland. Yes, he has some very good course history. Top 10s his past 2 tries, but they were also 3 years ago, 3 and 4 years ago. So he hasn't played it lately. Again, he's been battling, the tumor and all that stuff. It's a great story. But another reason that I am not excited about Gary Woodland is the fact that a lot of people are excited about Gary Woodland. 14.5%. So I can stay away from that, especially with the good drives and all that stuff. So, but good question, Derek. I guess good question why he wasn't up there. But that's mainly the reason. I think a lot of last week was an aberration with gaining all those strokes putting. In my top 10, really the only surprise is probably Andrew Putnam. But he's been playing very well lately. He's also getting helped by the fact that he is very unique. But he's been decent here. He's been pretty good. Been very good with the irons, at least in this field. Top 10 in good drives gained. He's been really good on par fours, very good around the green. Putnam's weakness is off the tee. So when you don't have a lot of off the tee factored in, Andrew Putnam's going to rise. I'm a little surprised he flew all the way up to the top 10. But you see, even by the numbers, he was 14th. Otherwise, I don't think there's a big surprise in the players who are in the top 10. You can always argue the ordering, sure. But enough of that, enough rambling on my rankings. Let's go through the price board, figure out where our fellow contestants seem to be going, and then how we can maneuver around all the chalk. So in the 5 digits this week, in the 10Ks, we have 4 players. Ludwig, 10-8, Tommy, 10-7, Cantley, 10-2, Corey Connors at 10-1. I've been following with Denny McCarthy the last 3 years when he was in the 6Ks. I have been a Denny McCarthy believer, despite the fact that I generally don't value putting. I value approach more than putting by a substantial margin, I guess is the more correct way to say that. But I have been following Denny McCarthy for quite a while. I don't know if it's been 3 years, but I've been very high on Denny McCarthy, and it was a very good week at the Memorial. I guess it's been 2 years now, when he had his coming out party, finishing second to Victor. Because Denny McCarthy was very, very unique that week, and I was all over Denny McCarthy that week. So I'm glad to know that I'm not the only masochist, Rose, in following Denny McCarthy. But I do believe in the talent, and his irons have gotten so much better, as we'll talk about in the 9Ks. But his irons have gotten so much better, and he's still a premium putter. But in the 10Ks, in the 5 digits, those 4 players, they all rate out very well. Cantley drops precipitously because he's never played here at TPC San Antonio, so this value is a little higher. I have to put an arbitrary value in there, and I make it the same for every player who's never played. So Jake Knapp has the same value, for example. Kurt Kitayama has the same value in there. So he's the one that's getting hurt the most. But I'm going to be honest, I'm not doing anything crazy like full fading Scotty and Rory like I did last week. But I have no issue not coming up into the 10Ks. I will. And I think the player I'm most confident in, Corey Connors, but man, 31% is a whole lot. That's a whole lot of ownership, and you got to ask yourself, at 31%, Corey Connors, this is Scotty level. Is Corey Connors Scotty Scheffler? I'm sorry, I just don't think he is. Don't get me wrong, I'm playing him. I'll play some Connors, but I can't get excited about it because he's at 31% ownership. I want to play all Fleetwood and fade Connors, Ludwig, and Cantley. How crazy is that? I mean, it's not crazy, but understand, Tommy's at 27%. So, a lot of people are thinking very similar to you, Derek. And it makes some sense. Tommy has only played here once, but he did finish top 10. This course feels like the perfect fit for Tommy. You don't have to have a lot of length. Rewards very good iron play. He's actually been pretty solid around the green so far in 2025. He's putt well on Poa Trivialis. So it makes all the sense in the world. But much like Corey Connors, this is kind of Rory level. When Scotty's in the field, this is kind of Rory level. Is Tommy, equal to Rory? Is Connors equal to Scotty? Sorry, I don't think so. So I'm not telling you I'm full fading them, because I'm not. I'm going to have them in lineups. But I'm probably going to be under these percentages for these 2 guys, because that is a lot of ownership to eat. That is a lot of chalk to eat. And as much as I want to like Ludwig, I do have one big concern with Ludwig, and that's his short game, particularly for this course. Now, the sand saves are fine. Top 10. He's actually good. But he's not the greatest around the green. Putter can be a little bulky, but you can argue that with a lot of players. So, I like Ludwig. I'm probably going to be slightly less on Ludwig as well. Long story short, I'm going to be less on the 10Ks this week because the one player I want to be confident in is so highly owned that I just can't get excited about it. So I'm going to play a lot of balanced or more balanced looking lineups. I just am. I'm just going to try to avoid a lot of this chalk up here. So in the 10Ks, in the 5 digits, again, I'm most confident in Corey Connors. I hate recommending him to you because he is so widely popular. At this ownership, at that price, we've talked about this with like with Scotty. I mean, he basically has to top 5 to make it worth it. And I'm sorry, if you're going to give me one player in the field versus one player versus the field, 99% of the time I'm going to take the field. It's just the way golf works. Crazy things happen. So if I had to rank them, I would go Corey Connors first. I'd still probably go Tommy second, but it's close. I actually think Cantley's third, and I don't know. I just have a gut feeling that Ludwig might not. I don't want to say struggle, but I don't think Ludwig is going to accrue his value based on his ownership and being the highest priced player on the board. Thing is, if I'm fading the other three, Batia and Denny McCarthy, I'm fading a lot of people, including the Fleetwood lineups that start with Fleetwood and Batia or McCarthy. Okay. If that's the case, I'd be interested to hear where you're going with your second, because look up here in the nines, like a lot of these players are getting a lot of ownership. Sorry, I didn't mean to highlight Connors. Like in the nines, your most unique option is Hideki at 15%. So I mean, are you going Tommy down to the 8s? Is that how you're building more unique? Just interested to hear that, because if you're using a different 9 than Akshay or McCarthy, yeah, you're probably not using the chalkiest of the chalky options, but you're not necessarily unique. So let's look at the 10s, at the 5 digits. You're not on Denny. Well, you and I are completely at odds this week, Rose. So we'll just jump straight to Denny at 9,000. I want all the Denny McCarthy this week. Being the lowest price, 9K. Yeah, the ownership's pretty high, but so is everybody else in the 9Ks. His irons have gotten a whole lot better. Second in bogey avoidance, proximity, par 4s. Again, Denny McCarthy's weakness is off the tee. You don't have to have it here at Valero. It helps. You don't have to have it. I love Denny McCarthy. We're going to see a whole lot of Denny McCarthy throughout the show, especially later on in the picks. So I am all about some Denny McCarthy. He is going to be a huge part of my core, much like Minwoo Lee was last week. Hoping Denny McCarthy comes through for me in that way. I really want to like Hideki. Man, he always carries that withdrawal risk. And he's withdrawn from this tournament before. Hideki being the most unique option around him is quite appealing. I don't know. It's just it's the week before the Masters. Hideki has been fickle before. If you're willing to stomach the withdrawal risk, I would play Hideki. I'm just very hesitant about it because of the withdrawal risk. A lot of my lineups, I'm trying to fit Fleetwood and Finau or Fleetwood and Mitchell, adding some Kitayama. I have some Berger too, but those are all chalky. We're quite a bit different, Derek. I'll tell you that much. I know Finau rated high, but I'll show you why I'm not too thrilled about Finau when we get to the 8s. Mitchell, I mean, if you're not afraid of the putter, sure. Because he's still very good ball striking wise. So, it seems like I'm quite at odds with a couple of the viewers. Rose not on McCarthy. Seems like Derek is on Finau, and I'm nowhere near Finau. So, but as we continue our look into the nines, there's only one player I'm not using in here in the nines. Like, I will use Hideki. I'll try to be very sparingly with it because of that withdrawal risk. I'm going to use all the Denny McCarthy. He's going to be 80 to 90%. The one player I'm out on is Daniel Berger. No, Derek, I would not. If you have a strong conviction on Finau or Berger or anybody like that, the most important opinion is yours. If you have a strong conviction, play them. I'm just giving you my reasonings why I'm not on these players. But Berger, I like Berger a lot. He is still too expensive, and he's still too widely popular. That's all I can tell you about Berger. Because I even wrote about this in the write up with Gabe, that I think Daniel Berger's gonna win soon. I do. He's coming in off a top 20 at the Players, top 15 at the API. He's been putting well. Around the green is strong. Like, he's returning to form. 5 straight top 25s. And 6 in his last 7. So, he's returning to form. This is completely... My full fade of Berger is completely a fade on his price and his ownership. That's all. He's still too expensive. He's still too popular. I'm going to try to find Berger when he drops into the 8s. He might not ever again. He might go back to pre-injury Berger. But if that means I'm late on Daniel Berger, then I accept that. But you're going to gain so much more by fading Berger and him, finishing outside the top 20 or 30 than you are using him with the risk that he misses the cut in the worst case scenario or T40 or whatever. So I don't know. I don't like the price. I still think he's too high. I don't like the ownership. And Patrick Cantlay, for me, he's on a mission this year. I don't hate that, Rose. I really don't. I think that might start this week. Just very, very quickly on Cantlay, and then we'll go back to Berger. But I don't think people realize, even though Cantlay doesn't have the extreme top finishes, top 15 at the Players, top 5 at the Genesis, like, his irons have been very good. Patrick Cantlay's irons have been very good. So I'm with you in that thinking, Rose. Now, the thing is, he has not played the Valero maybe ever, or it's been a long time. Yeah, he's never played it. So we don't know if he's going to take to the course. You would think one of the top players in the world would. Sometimes there's things about it that they don't like, which is a good segue to Berger. Berger, he has played the Valero twice. It's been a long time ago. I understand that. But this course hasn't changed all that much over the years. Berger's 0 for 2 here. So that's a helping reason why I'm off of Berger this week. Otherwise, rest of the 9Ks, I'll sprinkle. I like Jordan Spieth this week. I'm usually not a big Jordan Spieth guy. I like him this week. I really like Keegan Bradley. I'm a little disappointed that he's at 18%. I was hoping he might be a tad bit more unique than that. But behind McCarthy, who's going to be in 1,000% of my lineups, I'm probably going to be most on Keegan in the 9s. And then I will use the defending champion Akshay as well. I'm going to be a little bit lower than 22% on him, but I'm going to use him. Like in the 9Ks here, I am playing a true scatter shot in the 9Ks, with the exception of Denny McCarthy is part of my core. And then Daniel Berger is my full fade. The other four in here, I'm using to some extent. That's what makes me like it more. No course experience, just like taking those kinds of risks. Absolutely, and sometimes that's what you need to do to really catapult in the big GPPs. Yeah, absolutely. I don't hate it. I really don't. You and I are on the same, on similar thought process in that regard with Cantley. Now, clearly we're on opposite ends of the spectrum on Denny, but yeah, I mean, I don't see anything wrong with it. I really don't. And Cantley has shown he can come through on the biggest of stages too. So, I think I honestly I'm kind of hoping Cantley not necessarily falters, but has another boring top 20 this week, because I think his ownership might get deflated for the Masters if that happens. And heaven forbid if he were to miss the cut this week. I don't think it happens, but if he were to miss the cut this week, I think that really deflates it, because Cantley is somebody I've been looking at for the Masters for a little bit. All right, moving into the 8s. We need to speed this up because I still have lineups to get through. In the 8s, sorry, Derek, I'm just out on Finau again, like I am on Berger. Finau has not been good lately. Like, yes, he finished top 5 at the Genesis about a month and a half ago, but look at the irons. He's lost every single tournament since then. We know he struggles putting, or putting's not his big thing. Sorry, I just can't get there. Not when the irons are consistently bad. So he's clearly not the answer for me in the poll question. So I'm completely out on Finau. Mitchell could be interesting. He's always team no putt. Showed some signs of life at Houston last week. Probably somebody that I'll use once or twice. Again, remember, I play multiple lineups, so I can afford to have, a little bit of here, a little bit of there, whatnot. But really, in the upper 8s, like I'll dabble Keith Mitchell, I'll dabble some Siwoo Kim. I don't like this ownership. He's been very good here, so keep that in mind. He does have some very strong course history, but I was really high on him last week at Houston, and that did not work out well in my favor. So kind of gun shy there on Siwoo. Another player that I want no part of, Sam Burns. His irons have been atrocious in 2025. JT Poston's worth a look. I don't hate JT Poston. He's at an awkward price point, at least for me, in the style of lineups that I'm trying to build. But I do want to casually mention JT Poston. He's been putting much better lately. I want to go Bud Cauley with Fleetwood, but that is too chalky, I feel like. Well, good segue, Derek. Bud Cauley is getting some attention, but I like it a lot. I like Bud Cauley quite a bit this week. 4th in sand saves. He's actually top 10 in irons in this field. 3rd in proximity. He's been playing really solid golf lately. So I like a lot of Bud Cauley. The one thing I am kind of worried about with Bud Cauley is the good drives. He can get a little wayward, but he's one of the few players that doesn't have a pink or red statistic across here. Like, he's good. He's either elite elite for this field, elite, good, or at worst, average on all of his metrics. So I like Bud Cauley a lot. Good evening, Ray. Thanks for jumping in chat. Very much appreciated. It's good to see you this evening. Any thoughts on Chan Kim? You beat me to the punch. We'll talk about it, but Chan Kim is somebody that I like in the low 7s. But let me get there because we got some questions coming in, and I want to hit hit all of those and make sure I talk about each of the price ranges. But short answer is I like him. I'll be using him. I don't know how much I'll be using him, but I'll definitely have some exposure to him. So yeah, in the upper eights, sprinkle a little bit of Keith Mitchell. I'll sprinkle a little bit of Siwoo. I still consider this high eights, but mid eights. I'll use a little bit of JT Poston. No Finau, no Burns. Don't like Tom Kim this week. I'm going to use quite a bit of Bud Cauley. I'm going to use quite a bit of Sam Stevens. I'll go back to the Sam Stevens love that I had earlier this year. I think this suits Sam Stevens' game very well. He's been very good here. I believe a top 15 in the top 5. Might be 2 top 10s on Sam Stevens. The irons have been better than what is showing here. He kind of fell apart at the Waste Management and one other place. So I like a lot about Sam Stevens. I'm going to be using these two guys in the low eights a whole lot. And that's, showing you kind of anchoring my preference for balanced lineups. Moving into the upper sevens, Ben Griffin's worth a look. He's got a lot to play for, trying to play for the Masters. I think he fits well here. 8th in putting. It's off your screen, but you have to take my word for it. 8th in putting on this surface like him. We talked about Gary Woodland. I would not get carried away with his second last week. A lot of that was based on the putter, which he gained 8.7 on the greens. No thanks. My answer to the poll question is actually the only player that is not, or only option that's not gotten a vote. I'm most intrigued with Matt Fitzpatrick. Doesn't mean I'm playing him, but I'm most intrigued about Matt Fitzpatrick. One, he top 10 this last year. He's very good around the green. Sand saves. He's a good scrambler. Good enough of a putter to avoid bogeys. I'm not using him this week, but I want to see how he does the week before the Masters, because he's played well at Augusta too. Augusta feels like it fits Matt Fitzpatrick. So I'm most intrigued by Matt Fitzpatrick. The irons need to show some kind of life. But I'm not playing him this week. Let me make that very clear. But my answer to the poll question, I'm most intrigued to see what Matt Fitzpatrick does this week. Another core play for me is going to be Ryan Gerard. I like a lot of Ryan Gerard this week. Was hoping he'd be a little bit more unique than what it's showing, but 3rd in irons, top 20 in sand saves, par 4 scoring, total procs. The big issue with Gerard is around the green in general, but you notice that he's pretty good in sand saves. So I'm hoping that any around the green that he has to deal with this week is just bunker play. But that is the one concern, is his around the green game. But otherwise, I like a lot of Ryan Gerard. He's going to be a big part of my core this week. Take a look at Rico Hoey. I don't hate it. He's very, very poor with the putter. If you're focused on ball striking this week, you need to look at Rico Hoey. And then literally the rest of the mid-sevens, I'm kind of scattershotting. I'll use a little Novak. He burned me last week. I'll use him a little bit. I'm not nearly as high on him. I'll even use Brian Harman. I'll use last week's Mad Scientist play. I kind of like Ryan Fox as well. Irons are good. He's been putting well, getting back into form. Tom Hoagie rated out 7th. Anytime you have a big preference in precision, like good drives and iron play, he's going to rise, at least in my rankings. He's played well here. With everything like Tom Hoagie, it's all about, around the green. He's actually been pretty good on this surface because he's not a very good putter, but he's been good on this surface. Around the green's been bad. Anything that requires a lot of off the tee, he wouldn't fit. So by the numbers he fits, I don't think I'm nearly as high on him as 7th would insinuate, but I'm definitely going to use some Tom Hoagie. And then moving into the low sevens, I actually don't like much at 73. At 72, take a long look at Andrew Putnam. I talked about him in the reveal of my top 10, but anytime you don't have to have off the tee, he's going to rise. His irons have been good. Generally keeps the ball in front of him. Very good putter. Very good around the green. I like Andrew Putnam. I'll go back to Sam Ryder a little bit. This is not me at the Players and at the Valspar or wherever it was. I think it was the Valspar where I was hammering Sam Ryder to you. That's not this. I will use him, just not much. And then the third big core play that I have for you all is Mac Meisner. Last week, my Mad Scientist play was Ryan Fox. And it turned out very, very well. He finished tied for 15th. But I was between Fox and Meisner. And Meisner had a decent enough Houston in his own right. At 7,100, he's another one of these players that does not have a poor statistic at all. Not a single one. He's got more, mediocre ones than some of these other guys do. But he doesn't have a bad one. 4th around the green. 2nd in opportunities, especially when it's difficult. Good par 4s. Bogey avoider. Mac Meisner is going to be a big core play. He's going to round out my lineups. He's going to be my 6th guy in a lot of my lineups. So Mac Meisner, my 3 core plays, if they don't play well, Mac Meisner, Ryan Gerard, and Denny McCarthy. If those 3 players don't play well, I will lose. They are core for me. Bud Cauley's a pretty close to core, but I think he's slightly under 50% of my lineup, so I don't consider that core. These 3 guys, Meisner, Gerard, McCarthy, are in a lot of my lineups, much more than 50%, so they are considered core. But elsewhere in the low 7s, I like a few plays. If you're not big on Mac Meisner, take a look at Victor Perry. He played well last week. Fits this course, I think. I don't hate Sammy Valimaki either. Again, much more into the ball striking, much like Rico Hoey. But Sammy Valimaki's, a better putter. And to your point, Ray, I do like Chan Kim. Now, the issue with Chan Kim, wrong page view. The one issue with Chan Kim, and it's a fairly small sample size, Ray, but when it's been difficult, he has struggled. He's generally better when it's easy. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him, maybe play well on Thursday and Friday based on the forecast, and then kind of fall off Saturday and Sunday when the wind really picks up and I think it gets really difficult. Yes, it says he plays well in the wind, but I'm just going by what we see here. When it's been difficult relative to par, he has generally struggled. Again, smaller sample size, but yeah, that's my concern. But I do like the thought process there. I'm going to be using some Chan Kim, Ray. And then lastly, because we're running well over time, 2 6K plays to mention to you all. One's going to be pretty chalky. Joel Damon looks like he's going to be pretty chalky. The last confusion is what are your thoughts on Doug Gim? Not in love with him. I know I casually mentioned him last week and he missed the cut. Again, if much like Keith Mitchell, if you're willing to stomach a bad putter, okay. But I was pretty disappointed with his performance last week at Houston. I almost said the Valspar at Houston. So, I don't know. Just he's been, mediocre here as well. Not in love with it. If you play multiple lineups, I wouldn't hate the idea of you throwing him into one because he can go nuclear with the irons, but I'd much rather Chan Kim in that regard. If your lineups are limited, I would much rather Chan Kim at that price. And if you have the 100 to spare, Mac Meisner. 2 6K plays to recommend to you all. Hey, Brobarian, thanks for jumping in chat. Very much appreciated. Haven't seen you in quite a while. Hopefully you've been well. Things are going well in your world. You've had a good start to 2025, and that you're ready for the Masters that's coming up in a week. Good to see you in chat this evening. 2 6K plays, again, very quickly. Joel Damon, he's going to be the chalkiest play. He's the most projected owned player in the 6Ks. I wanted to mention him, but I'm a little less excited about it because he's the most popular player. So the one 6K play that I want to mention to you all, because I'm not in here, I'm building more balanced lineups. Ricky Castillo. Same price as Joel Damon. Ricky Castillo. He's been playing very well lately. Sand saves. This is a bit of a smaller sample size, but he has struggled with it. But, accurate with the irons. Good with the irons. Accurate off the tee. 10th in total procs. Par 4 scoring's been good. So, if you're in the 6Ks, take a casual look at Ricky Castillo. Okay, we got to make some lineups and cover the picks challenge. So I'm going to fly through this as quickly as possible. For those who play tiers contest, tier 1, Ludwig Tommy Cantley. Ooh, that's interesting. Let's go Tommy. It's pretty close between Tommy and Cantley for me in tier 1. I'll take Tommy. I might switch that to Cantley depending on how chalky the rest of this lineup goes. But right now I'll say Tommy. Tier 2, Connors, Hideki, Spieth, Keegan, and Berger. Unfortunately, I'm just very confident that Corey Connors is going to play pretty well. Having said that, I'm really high on Keegan. So you know what? Let's get a little unique in tier 2. Let's go Keegan. Because I went Tommy in tier 1, let's go Keegan tier 2. Tier 3, Akshay, McCarthy, Mitchell, Finau, and Burns. It's all McCarthy for me in tier 3. No ifs, ands, or buts. Tier 4, Siwoo, Poston, Tom Kim, Bud Cauley, Matt McNeely, and Sam Stevens. For me, it's between Bud Cauley and Sam Stevens. I'm going to go with Bud Cauley. Tier 5, Griffin, Knapp, Gary Woodland, Fitzpatrick, Hall, Fowler, and Kitayama. Ugh. I don't like a whole lot in here at all, so I guess I'll go Ben Griffin by default. Because I don't want any... I told you my concerns with Gary Woodland. Fitzpatrick's been atrocious so far this year. Hall and Fowler, not excited for. Kitayama, no thanks. So, yeah, Ben Griffin by default. And then finally, tier 6, Ryo Itatsune, Matty Schmid, Thor Bjornsson, Justin Lauer, Joel Damon, Fishburne, and Toasty. Well, I guess I'll take Damon since he's one of the few players I talked about down in this range. So this tier's construction goes Tommy Fleetwood in tier 1, Keegan in tier 2, Denny McCarthy tier 3, tier 4, I would go Bud Cauley. Sam Stevens is also quite worthwhile. Tier 5, I'm going to go with Ben Griffin. Tier 6, I'll go Joel Damon, kind of by default. Trevor Cohn, what about him, Rose? Is that your mad scientist play? Is that your bold suggestion for the week? Trevor Cohn, he is... I feel like he would be in the 6s. Yep, there he is. Didn't rate out well for me at 6,100. Very unique, but looks like the only thing he's got going for him is putting on this surface. He does perform well on, some long par 5s. Okay, but I mean he was pretty poor in everything else. So I'm not there with you on that one, Rose. If that's what you were insinuating by throwing out that name. All right, let's try to build a couple lineups real quick and then figure out how we're going to maneuver around them. Again, feel free to keep the questions coming. I apologize if I can't get to all of them. I try to keep the show at an hour. We're already a little bit long and we have to cover the picks contest, so nothing personal if I don't get to your question, but keep them coming and I'll try to get to as many as possible. Most projected owned player looks like Corey Connors. Then probably Akshay. And this does not force our fellow contestants to go down into the 6Ks. Joel Damon at 5%, but really doesn't look like too much is getting used down here other than Lee Hodges at 7,500. So, Lee Hodges would come here. Gary Woodland is up here as well. Ryan Gerard's getting a little bit of attention. This leaves them, actually, shoot, Lee Hodges there, Ryan Gerard there. 77, not a whole lot at 77. So, take your pick. Maybe Rico Hoey here. Maybe Tom Hoagie could get some attention. This is leaving a little bit of money on the table. Maybe they jump up to a low 8. It could be possible, but you see close to 100% cumulative ownership. I mean, this is going to be very, very chalky. You're going to have that with a 31% Connors, which is, again, one of the reasons why I was kind of stressing it, that I don't hate fading Connors. He is the player I'm most confident in the 5 digits, but that's a whole lot of ownership. That is a whole lot of ownership. So that looks like a pretty darn chalky way to build a lineup. The other way, if our fellow contestants are getting a little bit more greedy, I'm going to say Joel Damon. It only looks 5%, but I'm using the most chalky play in the area. So that's going to deflate this overall ownership. Just understand that. But if our fellow contestants are getting a slightly, a bit more greedy, maybe Tommy into a... I don't think Corey Connors would fit in this, but maybe it does. And it's pushing it. Again, this could be Akshay. Let's try to use a few different players here. Maybe this is Daniel Berger. Siwoo's getting a lot. Bud Cauley could absolutely fit in this. Gary Woodland, Lee Hodges. Again, your same culprits here. Then maybe mix in a low 7. Looks like a pretty good scatter shot approach here in the low 7s. Again, Tom Hoagie being close to 10%. 85%. It looks like balanced is the way most of our fellow contestants are going, if you want to consider it balanced. Starting at Corey Connors at 10-1, bottoming out at Lee Hodges at 75. Mad Scientist play is Van Rooyen. Interesting. Okay. I'm not there, but we'll see how that works out for you, Derek, come next week. So how am I going about this? How am I trying to combat these chalky-looking lineups? Well, this is the style of lineup I'm not doing all that often, but we can. You mentioned it, Rose. Let's throw Patrick Cantlay into this. He's the most unique of the 5 digits. It's not by much, but he's also saving you a little bit of money off these two. We throw Patrick Cantlay into this, and he's clearly one of the most talented players in this field. I'm going to give you the name Ricky Castillo at 6,900 to get off the Joel Damon chalk. That seems to be, at least, I can't say prevalent, but down in the 6Ks. I'll say Ricky Castillo. And then, again, Chan Kim, somebody that Ray mentioned earlier, I don't hate. That's really going to provide you a lot of opportunity here. Like, you can hover in the 8s if you wanted to. But this gives you a whole lot of flexibility if you're willing to do another low 7 here. Maybe it's not Chan Kim. Maybe it's Andrew Putnam, somebody I'm pretty high on this week. At 7,200, still able to get into the average a mid-8. So you could easily go Cantlay, Spieth, Cantlay, Keegan. Yeah, let's throw Keegan into this. I am really, really high on Keegan this week. And you're still able to get an 8 and a 7 or 2 low 8s into this. Like for me, it would be like maybe Sam Stevens, 100 off of Bud Cauley, but nothing wrong with Ben Griffin. Ryan Gerard. I know you're high on Gary Woodland, Derek. I'm not there, and Gary Woodland would kind of add some ownership to this. So I would say Ben Griffin. Again, Gerard, Rico Hoey. But that's one way you can go about it. Using a non-chalky 6K play, or maybe use a couple of 7s, or a couple of low 7s. But the way I'm mostly going, I'm just trying to beat these balanced lineups that seem to be so prevalent. Sometimes I will use a Connors. Sometimes I will use a Cantlay. But I'm telling you, my core, like Denny is my second man in. I'm using Gerard. I'm using Mac Meisner. This is how a lot of my lineups are going to be structured. And this is why I told you I'm playing a scatter shot in the nines. One lineup I'll do Hideki. Then I'll do a Spieth. I mean, I can still jump up to a Ludwig if I wanted to. I'm just more in the sevens than what I really like. But you can still do a Ludwig there. For me, like if I like the lineups that I'm not scared to use a Hideki, which I still am because of the withdrawal risk, but like use Hideki, this gives you that perfect sweet spot that I've been looking for. Cauley and Stevens. I like both of those players in the low eights. A little bit higher on the ownership just because Denny's pretty popular, but Cauley's popular for the area. But Hideki's the pivot in that range. And if we wanted to get a little bit more unique, take Hideki or Spieth. I'll say Hideki again just to emphasize this right here, this ownership. Hideki, Denny, Keith Mitchell could be in this, but really like Ryan Gerard, Rico Hoey. In fact, if we do like Gerard, we can hit maybe another lower seven like Ryan Fox, Tom Hoagie, Andrew Putnam, Sam Ryder. Again, I'm playing a whole lot of scattershot in here. Let's do Ryan Fox and see where that leaves us. That's 89, Keith Mitchell. I don't mind throwing him in a lineup. Siwoo's fine. JT Poston. Again, you're hovering in that 60 to 65% cumulative ownership, which is what we're shooting for. Yes, Hideki's got the withdrawal risk, so move this around like you want. I mean, you still have 400 to play with. Oh gosh, that's not what I meant to do. Maybe you're just really high on Connors. There you go. You're still well within your 80% that we try to look for. Goddard, he says. Not somebody that popped on my radar. Trying to give it a casual look. I didn't find him. Got her up. Irons been. I think the irons have been better than this. Good with the sand saves and very good on the surface. So I think you might have something there. I'm not there, Rose, but you might have something there. I can see the reasoning behind it at 68. I'm just a little bit more confident in Ricky Castillo at 6,900. Okay, we've been running a little bit over. Now it's time to do the picks challenge. And again, feel free to put your selections into chat, put them in the comments, or even better, play along with Gabe and I over on his social media page. But our selections, our picks for the Valero this week, I talked about it all night. I'm going to go with Denny McCarthy. I'm just a big believer in Denny McCarthy this week. There's several directions that I was feeling like I was going. I just stuck with my gut. I like Denny McCarthy. Gabe's going to go with Corey Connors. He's going to go out on a big limb. Really earth-shattering stuff there. I'm giving Gabe some grief. It's a very, very reasonable selection. He's going to take Corey Connors. My favorite play is Ryan Gerard. He's getting a little bit more ownership than I was hoping for at 10%, but right in the middle of the price board, middling ownership. I really like Gerard this week. Gabe's going to go with Sam Stevens. I'm going to full fade Daniel Berger. I talked about him, when we went through it. I just think he's too expensive. I don't like the ownership at 19%. I think that's too high as well. I'll let others play Daniel Berger on the off chance, or on the chance that he doesn't finish top 20 or top 25. Gabe's going to fade Akshay Bhatia. My Mad Scientist play, I usually try to give you a player in the 6Ks. I'm going to be honest, I didn't like a whole lot in the 6Ks. So my Mad Scientist play this week is Mac Meisner. Gabe's went well down into the well. 6,100, I think. Aaron Baddeley. If he's not 61, he's pretty low. 6,200. My apologies. 6,200. Aaron Baddeley is Gabe's Mad Scientist play. Makes a lot of sense. Around the green, putting, sand saves, Australian. Makes some sense. Fear of missing out, my FOMO. It's hard to say a big name player like Hideki being a FOMO. I'm going to play him simply because he's very talented, and he's a FOMO because I wouldn't be surprised if he withdraws. So I'll play him just for the coverage, but I'm nauseous about it, if you will. Good luck, Rose. Thanks for jumping in chat this evening. Seems like you're heading out of here. So thanks again, and good luck this week. Gabe's FOMO is Lee Hodges. He's going to play a little bit of Lee Hodges based on a lot of the chatter that has went on this week over on social media and pundits and all that. And then our wild card category for the week is the best way I could put it and fit it in onto the screen. Top player who's already qualified for the Masters. Now, yes, technically for me that would be Denny McCarthy because I'm picking him to win. But I'm going to choose Corey Connors. Again, I'm going on a big limb there. Real earth-shattering stuff. And Gabe's going to go with Patrick Cantlay. So there's our picks. If you want to see our detailed explanations, again, go check out his social media page. His handle is right there on your screen. I've got a lot of people to thank. I need to thank Derek, Rose, Phil, Joey, Ray, and Brobarian for jumping into chat this evening. Very, very much appreciated. Thanks to everyone who voted on the poll question. Looks like the winner, which of the big name out of form players are you most intrigued by this week, is Tony Finau. My answer is Matt Fitzpatrick. I want to see how he looks the week before the Masters. So thanks to everyone for participating in chat, for all the questions and participating in the poll question. Thanks to everyone else out there who tunes in, watches, listens, supports the channel by liking the videos, commenting, and subscribing. I always appreciate it. Love what I do. Taking a very in-depth look at golf statistics, giving you a statistician and data analyst view of what he sees, trying to help us all win a little bit of money in the process. But we're going to try to build on the momentum off of the Minwoo outright that we hit last week, build some momentum, keep the momentum for the Valero into the Masters. Thanks again for all the support, for all of the wagers you've made this week for the Valero Texas Open, for all of the DFS contests you play this week for the Valero Texas Open. For this weekend and every weekend, may all your bets be profitable.